It's Matty Fresh on the track up at State. And I'm bringing to you live my boys Alec and Nate, Tequila Ty, Jay, Nelly, and Dylan in the building. So kick it back, pour the drink. We chillin' because I'm boozing and betting and ballin' like I'm 2-6. And the blue kicks, watch me move quick. Yeah, this the blueprint. So who's getting involved? Welcome into the show. This is Booze, Bets, and Ball, baby.
And welcome back to Booze, Bets, and Ball, Penn State football podcast brought to you by Big Banter. We get to dive a little into the Northwestern game this weekend for Penn State. I have to record our interview with the Northwestern podcast of Big Banter a little later in the week, so we're spacing this out a little bit. But we're going to get into what we know about Northwestern and kind of the things we want to see Penn State do this week. So blow this up a little bit. All right. Just quick game notes. It's a noon kickoff for Penn State time, but it's really an 11 a.m. local kick like the Illinois game was. It's on the Big Ten Network, which I'm pretty sure this is the first time this year Penn State's on there. Yep. The line opened at Penn State minus 26. I saw it was up to 27 at the time I put this together. The matchup predictor, obviously Penn State a pretty big favorite. Last year in the Hurricane, 17-7 Penn State win at Beaver Stadium. This year the weather looks better, high of 66, cloudy. So I don't think we'll get a repeat of that disaster, which was not fun to sit through. What we could say about Northwestern without having kind of an inside source here, 2-2, which I think that might be two more than we expected. Overcame a 21-point fourth quarter deficit. I know Nate and I were talking about this. I had no idea this happened until about the middle of the day on Sunday. I just assumed they got blown out. Offense, not totally good outside of the fourth quarter against Minnesota this year. 24 points a game, less than 100 rush yards per game. Not bad in the pass department though. And then defense, not too bad of a pass defense, but almost 185 rush yards given up a game. What do we make of what we see from an outside perspective on Northwestern right now?
Yeah, they're actually winning, more winning and more middle of the pack Big Ten stats than I think anybody thought they would be. Right?
Yeah.
Going into the season, they were predicted to go 0-9 in the conference. I think by just about everybody. Finish at the bottom of the stat pile for everything, but they came back and beat Minnesota. Minnesota punt coverage made a bonehead play, could have downed it at the one very easily. The guy downed it instead in the end zone, which yields a touchback, and somehow Northwestern came back to win. They kind of got killed by Rutgers though, 24-7, and Duke, upstart Duke, 38-14. So they're not good, but
no. But
I mean, this is our favorite team this year in the Big Ten, besides Penn State, I would say. Considering the tiebreaker rules, we need this team to win as many games as we can have.
This comeback actually that they had over Minnesota is massive because both Michigan and Ohio State play Minnesota. So this is actually huge that they did this for Penn State. It's not expecting it. I mean, they scored 3 touchdowns in the last 12 minutes of regulation, went to overtime, held Minnesota to a field goal, and then had a walk-off touchdown. So Ben Bryant, the Cincinnati transfer, did not look great through the first 3 games, and then comes out here and goes 33 of 49 for 396 and 4 touchdowns. So Penn State
Franklin
really
said today he's the best natural passer that they've played so far this year. So
yeah, I was just gonna say that. When you look,
it ain't Cade McNamara, I can tell you that much.
No, it's definitely not him. It wasn't the Garrett Green. Altmaier, we thought it might have been him. It wasn't. Garrett Green was more of a running back than a quarterback against Penn State, the West Virginia kid. So yeah, those things were going on. Yeah, there. It's
okay. First off, if you don't know, if there ends up a 3-way tie in the Big Ten East Division with one loss, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, it comes down to the Big Ten West opponent's best record. So that is why Northwestern, we wish for them to win games, as well as Iowa, because we play them both plus Illinois. So we want them all to go finish 1, 2, 3 in the division, or in the conference division.
Yeah,
that was that comment. Now, this is the best. This is a far better offense than Penn State played last week, and close to the best offense that Penn State has played all year, which is ridiculous. But
yeah, I don't know if that's more about the other teams Penn State's played.
Other teams suck, but yeah, that's
they have not been good. But yeah, a little surprised, obviously, with everything that went on at Northwestern over the offseason with Pat Fitzgerald getting fired. For them to have this much juice, it's not a ton of juice, but it's a lot more than I expected, honestly. Like, you expect a team that went through kind of the offseason they went through to, when you're down 21 points at the start of a fourth quarter, you expect them to lose that game by 28 or 35, not win it in overtime. So, I think that was a little impressive, honestly.
Yeah, but to counter your point a little bit, look at 2012 Penn State. They had all that to go off in the offseason. Still came out and went 8-4. So they got something to play for. They got their pride. They're still college students at a big time, the Power 5 school. So they definitely go and win every game they can.
Yeah, that's true. So I wanted to talk about kind of how Penn State's going to put up some points here. And I wanted to get to the running game because Nelly and I talked about this on the Iowa review that we did on Sunday night. And Penn State, for the fact that they did rush for over 200 yards against Iowa, it was not anything of the explosive nature. It was all very methodical stuff, which has been the case the entire season. Nick Singleton, I don't think, has a 20-yard run this year. I think as long as 19, whereas last year by week 4, I think he probably had about 8 runs over 20 yards. So is this the week? Because I was reading the box scores of a couple of these Northwestern games this year, and Duke ran for 268 and 5 touchdowns on just 40 carries. So that's a 6.7 average, and that includes them kneeling a couple times and a sack. And then Minnesota, I don't know how you run this well in a game and blow it, but they ran for 242, a clip of 5.8 yards in average on 42 carries and 2 touchdowns. I don't know how you blow the game when you run that well. But is this the week that we finally kind of see Penn State's run game look a little more like it did last year?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they've still, like you said, they ran over 200 yards. I'm not positive on this, but I'm pretty sure they're still leading the conference in rushing. So, I mean, we can't get bored, like Franklin said, of just being methodical with the ball down the field. But at some point, they're going to break it. If you look at some of the clips, though, Singleton has been missing some wide open holes that you'd hope by a second-year starter now he'd kind of see them and hit these cutbacks, and he could have these 20-yard runs. So I guess they're just going to keep hammering it. If it goes into the bye week and we still haven't seen anything crazy, maybe you get a little worried. But I think this is a week that we see something open up a little bit.
The other thing that I would like to see, and I'm looking this up right now, is there's been 0 downfield passing all all season too, right? I think I'm looking up the depth of target for Drew Aller, and at least for the game against Iowa, I bet it is far less than like 10 yards downfield, right? Then like it was raining and all,
6 or 7.
His yards per attempt in that game, I think, was 4.5.
So he had.
So that's because, I mean, he threw when he completed 25 passes and it was only 166 yards. They are very much just taking what defenses are giving them right now, and I guess most of that is by design. They're trying to shorten these games against teams they feel they're far superior than. But there is a gear here I think we're still waiting to see, and I don't think we'll see it this week, on purpose anyway. And I don't think we'll see it against UMass on purpose. I think the first time you see Penn State look for explosive plays by design will probably be when they go to Ohio State, because, when you probably have to, because you're going to have to put up some points probably to win there. So I think a lot of this is by design right now, but you would think eventually by accident a run would bust or there would be a broken coverage that they get a big play on. It just really hasn't happened outside of literally the first touchdown of the season.
Yeah, and that's okay. If that's the plan, that's okay.
Right.
But like you can't do that throughout the season. So in the Iowa game, the average depth of target was 4.4 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there was a lot of behind the line kind of screens and things like that. But that eventually that has to change. And like you're saying, maybe it's all saving up. And we talked about this for years that, what are they holding back in the playbook and all these things. But like, it's just not going to cut it for the big games against Michigan, Ohio State. You got to spread the field vertically and you got to do things either through the running game or through the passing game.
And like you said, Alec, there has been some of those chances there available. They have just missed them. Like I can recall off the top of my head in the Illinois game, we had KLS down the sideline, which would have been a 50-yard touchdown or so. So there are just some of those growing pains that we have a first-year quarterback who, again, he's only had 4 starts. He's looked phenomenal in those 4 starts for being a 4-star quarterback. But later in the year, he's going to see that. He's going to wait half a second longer for it to develop, and he'll be there. Mm-hmm. He's going to hit more of those dig routes, which we saw a lot of the first game. I haven't really seen them throw many digs since that first game. So I think they're going to get there. They're definitely saving some stuff, but it's all coming along. We're breaking in the new quarterback. He's getting his feet wet still. He's still comfortable. And then stuff's going to take off soon.
So how much of this do you guys think has to do with maybe not a lack of confidence, but the fact they're still feeling out the receiver room? We were talking before about how outside of KLS, the snap counts for the other 6 guys who see time, which is Harrison Wallace, Liam Clifford, Dante Cephas, Malik McClain, Omari Evans, and Caden Saunders, it's fluctuated, significantly in the games where, Malik McClain, I think, was over 40 snaps against Illinois, had a couple drops, and then he was last of those 7 in terms of snaps this week against Iowa. So, are they not taking shots because outside of Leonard Smith, they're just not trusting anyone right now? Or, is there something else to it with the fact that they just don't know if they have a receiver right now?
Go, Tyler. What do you think?
They just have a lot of options. And like Franklin's been asking since the spring, no one's really stepping up and claiming that. McClain had a great first game, didn't really get many targets the second game, and then the third game he gets his chance with Trey Wallace out, and he has those drops. Saunders is working his way into the role, but, we have so many guys that there's just not a ton of targets for each and every guy. So when you get those, you got to kind of make them count and make a big play out of it. And some guys are taking advantage of it at times, and then there's some guys aren't. We ran 97 plays last game, and a lot of it was running the ball. We were just getting down the field, and we were trying to shorten it once we got that lead. We're not throwing it 50 times a game where there's enough targets for each of these 7 guys to get 2 or 3 targets, plus the tight ends, plus we're going to throw it to Singleton and Allen out the backfield. So, I think they're still waiting for that guy to emerge, but it's just the way the game is and how many guys we have that are capable of it. Is just they got to take the chances they have and whenever they come.
Yep, and that's a good point. And there were 26 catches last week. 5 of those went to the running backs. Let's see, we got how many? 9 of those, so a full third went to the tight ends. 6 for Theo Johnson, 2 for Ty Warren, and 1 for Khalil Dinkins. So you only have very few left over, both targets and kind of receptions for the wide receivers. Now, Keandre Lambert-Smith is clearly the number 1 guy, and he is not dropping balls. He had a crap penalty this week, which maybe could have gone either way. The one against Illinois, the personal foul, you want to see him avoid. But he has absolutely, I think, stepped up and has done a lot with his opportunities. So, we wanted to see one guy emerge, and there it is. Now you want to see one more guy emerge, but we'll see who that is.
Yeah, and just lastly then, the offensive line. Not counting UTEP, because it's UTEP, but the 3 Power 5 teams Northwestern has played, Rutgers, Duke, Minnesota, they have 2 combined sacks in those 3 games. So I think this is a week where we'd expect Drew Aller to stay upright and be clean in the pocket. He has been so far this season. They've had tougher tests, obviously, with Jazir Newton of Illinois, and then just the Iowa group in general is pretty good. So this is a week for them, I think, to put up some big offensive numbers because I think Aller's going to have a lot of time. And, Northwestern's given up, as I just mentioned, a lot in the run game without facing a back the caliber of the ones Penn State has. So I think that this kind of is the week to see that second gear from the offense, even if it's not by design, because I doubt it will be playing, Northwestern.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And like between sacks, as you mentioned, and tackles for loss, the Northwestern defense has generated 2 against Rutgers, 5 against Duke, and 4 against Minnesota. Like an average is roughly 7, give or take. They did have 9 against UTEP, but UTEP seems to really stink. So I think, like you're saying, that you expect Drew Allar to stay upright, and you also expect the running backs to not get tackled behind the line of scrimmage. So maybe this is the time where the running backs kind of break free a little bit here.
Yeah. It also could be a time maybe to take some of those downfield shots. Like, you're not too worried about Drew getting hit if you have the offensive line that's been playing as well they have. Get some of those more longer developing routes and take a shot down the field every now and then. You got to hit on some of those just to build some confidence too. And I think you want to build that before you get in these big games. So this could be a week we see that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned,
go ahead. Indulge me for a second. So Sean Clifford in 2019 had an average depth of target of 10.7. In 2020, it was 9.3. In 2021, 8.8. And in 2022, it was 8.6. And we talked a lot last year about how he was not taking shots downfield, and he had an ADOT of 8.6. Drew this year is 6.6 for the season. So it is a markedly different, even less kind of pushing it downfield passing game than they had last year. Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also,
I don't know.
I mean, that comes back to, like Alec was saying, maybe he just doesn't feel completely comfortable with those receivers yet. And he is with those running backs and tight ends. So he's just taking what the defense are giving him. And they're calling routes that he's feeling the comfortableness of getting the ball there and making sure it's complete. I think he's really stressing taking care of the ball this year, which is awesome.
And that's the other side. 0 turnovers, right, which is fantastic. He has been incredibly accurate in the throws that he is making. So you probably trade one for the other. Just by October 21st and November 11th against Ohio State and Michigan, they're going to have to take some shots.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a combination of the two things. I think the first thing is Sean Clifford obviously had pretty good relationships with his number 1 receivers during his career. He knew KJ Hamler since they were like in 8th grade or whatever, and he got very comfortable with Jahan Dotson, being there together so long. So that's part of it. And I think the other thing is, like we've been saying, he might not want to take those shots, and maybe the staff doesn't want to either, because they're like, why should we force the issue with incompletions or turnovers and let these 4 teams that we feel we are significantly better than that we've played so far, keep them in the game by going 3 and out or giving them a short field on a pick. So I think it's just, kind of a combination of those two things so far, but I think eventually it changes. All right. So we will get a little more in depth on Northwestern when I get to talk to the WildChat guys eventually. So we're going to stop it here though with us. So give me a score prediction for Saturday, because this is the last time we will be talking about this game.
I have been dramatically underestimating Penn State every game. So I am going to say 38-7 this week. Okay. And the line is right 24, right? I think, or so, or more. What's the line currently?
27.
7, okay.
So you're good.
I'll take 48-10.
All right. Yeah, because I was at 45-14. So I think Northwestern maybe gets an early touchdown on a Penn State team playing at 11 a.m. in front of 20,000 people, coming off a week where they played at 8 p.m. in front of 111,000 people. I think a little slap of reality will hit them early. Maybe Northwestern gets a quick one, and then Penn State scores maybe the next 45 and Northwestern gets one late. I could see that happening. So that's where I'm at.
Let me ask you guys something real quick.
Sure.
What do you guys think about the kicker so far after the week 1 disaster with Sander?
Yeah, I didn't realize I left. I didn't realize they missed one at the end of the Iowa game because I was feeling really good about them. I remember I was in the car with my brother on the way back from State College on Sunday, and I'm like, wow, I'm really happy. Like he made that decently long kick in the rain. He's like, yeah, he missed one too, and I had no idea. I was devastated. But so the two misses for Falcons was a block from 51, a kick that was blocked by probably a future top 10 NFL draft pick, and something in the 40s in the rain. So I think the two situations are not terrible. Both had some reasons why they were missed, but I think overall Penn State, we're not going to see Jordan Stout again where we're comfortably kicking from 55 ever again. If you're automatic from 40 and in and you make all the PATs, I'm happy.
Yeah. The block, unfortunately, that was the one of the penalty. And the guy who got penalized was not the guy who blocked the kick. So I would have felt better if the guy who blocked the kick was the one that leapt over the center and actually got penalized, but that's not the case. So that's a legit block. But like Alex saying, I think it is, I don't know. You made one, right? It's better than week one. So, and have not missed an extra point. I think if it's going to be 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 from virtually anywhere, they're going to go for it. So
yeah, they're going for it.
Yeah, they got a lot of confidence in that short game. It's like the Eagles almost that way.
I agree.
The punt game, though, too, is that's still a little bit questionable, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of shocking because that guy was a freshman All-American last year.
Yeah, my thing with him is, and I mentioned this when I went on the Hawkeye podcast last week, was he did all that down in Florida. The weather's a little different up here. It rains a lot more. It's colder. Punting's something that is kind of
weather yet too.
Yeah, so it hasn't been that bad yet. Yeah, it's last Saturday was the first time it was anything other than perfect. So yeah, I am. I do want to see how that goes because punting is a thing that is significantly altered by weather.
All right, here's another. What do you think of rugby style punters versus regular punters?
I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard for us to be fans of it.
Play the bounce too much rugby style, and that doesn't work out well because you get a lot of mishaps in that way.
Yeah, and you get some lucky breaks like the muff. I guess you're the one that went off the back of the Iowa guy, and you get that back. But what I didn't realize until this week that is if they are outside of the tackle box, they are free game, even if
they get absolutely railed.
That's like the most dangerous friggin' position you could be in. That was roughing, I think. But anyway, I don't like the rugby style punter. I would take Jordan Stout back and pay him $1 million a year just to punt for Penn State forever.
My one friend I always talk about, if you could franchise a player for college and they're in college forever, I might take Jordan Stout, honestly.
Even Barney last year, man, for the first 5 or 6 games was, dropping him inside 5 pretty constantly. But
yeah, I will say the one upside to sometimes not having the greatest punters, you get situations like we saw on Saturday night where it hits a guy in the back because it's so short and you get the ball. So, I don't expect that to happen often, but sometimes there's some perks to having a not so good punter.
Yeah.
We'll see.
One or two of those breaks, according to Cade McNamara, went a different way. The Iowa's winning that game. So.
That's they said the same thing after Penn State beat Pitt 51-6. They blamed the punter. I remember that because they muffed a punt and he mishandled a snap on a field goal or something, and they said that was why they lost. But yeah, just kind of used to those kind of excuses now. All right, so let's get on to the fun stuff. Let's talk about our drink for the week. Yeah, let's get to this. Enough football talk.
Well, we got another early starter, boys. So
yeah,
then a Bloody Mary with some brunch. I don't anticipate any of us are going to the game, and honestly, I don't know why anyone would really travel to Northwestern to watch a shit show. But I just sit at home, make some brunch, and make a little Bloody Mary with your vodka, tomato juice, and some seasonings.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of shrimp cocktail and bacon and all that shit in your Bloody Mary? You see those at some of the nice cocktail bars.
Honestly, Nate, I'm not even a huge fan of Bloody Marys. I only like them when I'm hungover.
Okay, fair enough. You see those like some places down in Texas where it's like a $50 Bloody Mary and it's got a whole charcuterie board in it or something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I see that more of as a dinner Bloody Mary or something. Like people do that. But if I make it a brunch one, it's usually because I'm hungover as shit and just need something to go down while I eat like breakfast and then go out and drink more.
Yeah, when I was looking up pictures to put in here, I know you're talking about Nate. A lot of them looked like more food than drink at the top of it. Pretty interesting. But yeah, big fan of Bloody Marys. Actually, the tailgate I go to every week makes good ones. So I'm on board with this one for sure. Definitely good one for early starts.
Yeah, goes great. We got a noon kick Eastern, 11 local. So make some breakfast, sit on your couch, have a couple Bloody Marys, watch the game, and then go get shit faced after.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, so we don't have Nelly today because I made him do the review with me on Sunday, so I kind of gave him the day off. But big week last week, 4-1-1. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt on the Ohio State win because the line I gave him was 3, and then everyone said the line became 3.5, and Ohio State won by 3. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because it was the line I gave him. So
good man.
Week, yeah. Big week, went to 9-5-1 from 4-5, or no, 5-4. Sorry. So nice week there for him. Let me look this up now because I know he said I put these games out and then he told me pretty much others. So I do have the Texas-Kansas game on there. He likes Kansas plus 17, and he had Notre Dame money line, he said, but so he didn't give me if they cover or not. I'm gonna say they cover. So I'm gonna go. He said money line. I'm sorry, you're giving them the 5.5. He did not give me something on USC and Colorado. After seeing what Oregon did at Colorado, I think I'm gonna take USC to cover here. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Over under is 66. I think this goes way over.
Yeah.
Because USC can't stop anybody either.
No, that's the other thing. USC is less fundamentally sound on the lines than Oregon is. So I am interested to see how that goes. I think this literally could be a track meet, but I don't see Colorado stopping them. And if Travis Hunter doesn't play, their chances of keeping up in a shootout goes down significantly.
I got USC covering that. Colorado sucks.
I loved watching that game.
They're so overrated.
Yeah, they beat a TCU team which lost like 18 starters from last year in their first game.
TCU wasn't the reigning runner-ups. They wouldn't have been ranked to start the year.
Yeah, they're also coming off the fact they lost the most embarrassing fashion ever in a national championship. That definitely played a role. Nebraska's awful, and then they went to double overtime by a team they were supposed to beat at home by 4 touchdowns and rush the field. So yeah, I don't. Colorado's a lot of hype, not a lot of substance.
Spot on. I think Texas covers though. I think Nelly's wrong on that one. I got Texas covering.
Yeah, that one's interesting to me. I think that's a good number.
The only way I say they don't cover is if they're looking ahead to Oklahoma. But
yeah,
I think Texas actually might be back this year, boys.
Yeah, Texas Oklahoma is the next week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe then. I don't know.
I still like Texas.
Well, you picked them to win everything, and Quinn Ewers to win the Heisman. So.
And hey, look how I'm looking so far.
Yeah, pretty good.
That's true.
Kansas undefeated though. Kansas has been playing pretty well.
Yeah,
it's their toughest game since like Illinois.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because BYU sucks.
Yeah.
They play. Okay, so they killed Missouri State 48-17, beat Illinois by 11, snuck by Nevada 31-24, and then beat BYU 38-27. So there's not a lot to compare versus UT.
That's true. Yeah. Well,
hook 'em horns.
Yeah. All right. So that is eyes up. This is that's gonna do it for this part of the podcast. I think there's gonna be a second part. I don't know for sure yet, but there should be a nice chat with West Virginia, or the North. I keep saying West Virginia, the Northwestern guys. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next week. The bye week's there, so we'll do an episode just centered around a review really next week, I guess, because we have nothing else to talk about. So we will see you next week.
completely. Do you have any questions for us about the matchup this weekend?
Yeah, of course. So I will say this. I was very out of it after the Penn State game because I think we played at the same time this past weekend, right? They were both night games. And when I opened up the box score on Sunday and I saw Northwestern won, I was like, huh, like that's like I was somewhat surprised. But then when I actually clicked on it and I saw what the score was, I was like, oh. So, my big thing is obviously there was a lot that went on at Northwestern over the offseason. And was that, in a sense, what happened in that fourth quarter, a turning point? Because when a program goes through the changes that Northwestern did, and you're down 21 points with a quarter to go against a divisional, foe, most of the time, most teams in that situation would probably roll over and lose by 28-35. Like, what did you guys see from this team in that fourth quarter that, maybe a light came on? Like, where are you guys feeling after that?
I think a big thing was it feels like this team has finally bought in. And it's definitely a weird situation because last year, Northwestern played tons of games where, they would be down by a ton entering that third quarter, entering the fourth quarter. And like you said, they would roll over and lose by a ton last year. There were countless games where that happened. However, this year, it finally feels like they've bought into David Braun. It finally feels like David Braun, has a grasp on this team. A question that we've been asked a ton of times is, what does David Braun have to do in order to stay the head coach after this season? And it's something like what happened in that fourth quarter that kind of shows that if he can continue to, keep the team like that, believing in themselves, that he would be able to kind of remain the head coach as the years go on. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And then I also just think that, this team is finally learning a little bit more about itself and what they can do. The defense finally started to make some tackles and be able to stop the run in that fourth quarter. The offense finally opened up. Ben Bryant looked like an actual good QB for his first time. So a lot of that happened, but I think the biggest thing was the team finally bought in and they believed.
And to kind of echo the idea of them buying in the press conference after, Braun kind of talked about how, they're down 21 in the third quarter. But for the first time since he's been here, they weren't flinching. They were like, Coach, we got this. They went out there and they played their hearts out and they figured it out. And this team, after kind of a really tough season last year, and then everything that happened in the offseason, then they beat UTEP in the home opener 2 weeks ago. And it's like, wow, they actually won a game. This is great. And then they go to Duke and they get blown out by Duke. But then they, things look ugly for 3 quarters against Minnesota. They turn it around. These are the moments that David Braun needs to have if he wants to keep his job continuing until next year and the year after. But it also shows that this Northwestern team, they're able to compete, and it's only going to continue to feed that idea of them buying in. So I think that's kind of my biggest takeaway from the Minnesota game is, one, they have the talent to compete in the Big Ten West. The Big Ten as a whole, maybe not so much. We'll see on Saturday. But definitely there's a belief and there's a buy-in to the program. And I think that's the most important thing after the program had its darkest summer ever.
Yeah, for sure. To answer your original question about whether this is a turning point, for me personally, I don't think I could answer yes or no until the season goes on a little bit further. But like Adam and Dylan said, I think that I feel like our team has been very discombobulated. Like, it's been obvious that there's talent in certain areas. I think that was one of our big things last year. We had multiple NFL draft picks, which is wild to say. But we still were 1-11. So clearly that talent, no one was working together well enough for it to all come together. And I think that this game was the first time I really looked at the team and was like, okay, there's talent in different places, but everyone's finally working together and everyone's finally coming together. And it doesn't feel like this disorganized mess that it felt like for me watching the entirety of last season. So turning point, I'm not sure, but I think certainly, as Adam and Dylan said, like, it shows us that we are capable of doing well. We are capable of making plays. We are capable of coming back 21 points plus and winning a game. So I think, yeah, definitely a big takeaway is that we are able to, like, we can.
Gotcha. I will say selfishly, we were hyped that actually happened because the whole thing with the Big Ten East this year is if there's a 3-way 11-1 tie, So the tiebreaker would come down to the conference record of the teams you played in the West. And Penn State plays, obviously, you guys, and Michigan and Ohio State both play Minnesota. So that was actually huge for us, on a selfish note, that happened. But like you mentioned with the draft pick, so last year, like, to us, when I was at that Hurricane game, the 17-7 game, it was Evan Hull, running the ball a lot. Now the identity, I guess, has changed. What has Ben Bryant brought over, to this offense that has kind of changed it from a ground and pound to now Northwestern's throwing for 400 yards in a game?
I think the funniest thing about Northwestern is that if you look at Northwestern throughout history, it's been a run-heavy team. I think that's kind of just the Big Ten style of football. But I mean, in the past, recent history, we've had Justin Jackson. We've had obviously Evan Hall. Like, those are two really solid running backs that have been kind of staples next to the Northwestern name. But for the first time, I mean, this team wants to throw the football, because I think that's where our strength is. I think it's the strength in the receivers, especially. AJ Henning and Cam Johnson at the 1 and 2, and then obviously you saw what Bryce Kurtz did last week: 10 catches, 215, Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week, his first 2 career touchdowns too. So I think this team has a strength at receiver, doesn't have a strength at running back, and that finally has a quarterback that can actually throw the ball downfield if given some protection. That's honestly the thing I'm really worried about against this Penn State team, with an aggressive defense, a physical defense, a very talented defensive front. This offensive line isn't very good. I would say it's probably the weakest part of the offense as a whole. They're not very deep. There's not a lot of, strong play up there so far through the first couple of weeks. But against Minnesota was kind of the first game where they really actually stepped up and they gave Bryant the time in the pocket to look downfield and make some throws. And especially in the second half, he wasn't really pressured at all. And he had the time to, put a good throw in there. And that's what happened. And that's what allowed him to throw for basically 400 yards. So I think that's kind of just the way it's been for Northwestern. They've kind of moved away from the running game because it hasn't worked, and they have a strength at receiver.
I also think, though, that a major reason we threw for 400 yards last game was also when you're down 21, right, you have to throw the ball. Yeah. I think that this team, when they can, they will still try to run the ball. Cam Porter was someone who, coming into the season, I hyped up a lot. I was a big fan of Cam Porter. He struggled a lot this year. Obviously, the offensive line is a big reason for that. But I still think that if they are able to, make the run game work, that they definitely will try that. Hyman is another great running back who has shown flashes so far this year as well. But Bryant is more accurate than any quarterback, I want to say, that we've had as well lately. You look at quarterbacks from last year. Brendan Sullivan wasn't accurate. He was very mobile. Helinski wasn't accurate really as well either. Bryant, he's that pocket passer, but he's been accurate somewhat better than we've normally had. But when he has that time, he'll make the plays that he has to kind of win a game. And I think that's what we've seen so far.
I also think the offensive creativity too is another piece. Like, we're running the ball not just with Cam Porter or Joseph Hyman, who I actually really like Joseph Hyman. I think he's going to be a really big player for us in the next couple of years. Just his speed in the open field is really impressive. But we're giving run plays to Jack Lausch, who's our third string, low key, probably actually fourth string quarterback. But he's getting a lot of looks, sophomore quarterback. And he's really mobile with his legs, but also, like, there's so many run plays for AJ Henning too. So the fact is, the running back room in just pure running the football isn't the strongest part of this team. So Mike Bajakian has really looked at other ways of incorporating a run game. I like AJ Henning in the jet sweeps, but it's just, this offense it's so weird because for any offense to be successful, you need a really good offensive line, really. Yeah. And that's something this team doesn't have. So they need to kind of compensate for that in kind of trickery and, being difficult with the football and kind of just being unpredictable a little bit. Yeah. So I think that's kind of where Bajakian's kind of focused on this season, trying to think of different things and different looks to take a little bit of the pressure off the offensive line too.
Understandable. Yeah. I guess then moving on to defense, I noticed that Duke and Minnesota both, I think, ran for over 5 yards a carry. And I saw Duke was, I think, over 6 actually, and they had 5 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, this is kind of the week that we want to see Penn State finally assert itself with big runs, especially with Singleton. What has been kind of the problem with that? Is it just Duke and Minnesota just kept going at it, eventually it broke? Or is it more of there's a consistent 5 to 6 yards and the middle of the defense is weak?
Yeah, the latter, unfortunately.
Okay.
I just think our defense is not strong against the run game. It's just just there are holes always. Like Minnesota, I believe over 200 yards rushing in
44
in the first half.
No,
First quarter.
It's 150 in the first half.
Oh wow.
Bad. Just
Sorry.
I got you.
It was really bad. Is essentially what I'm trying to get at.
I think the total over the past 2 games has been 512 yards on the ground.
It's insanely bad.
I did read that. Yeah.
So I wouldn't even give credit to Minnesota and Duke.
Okay.
Well, Duke is great, but like I still wouldn't give them credit offensively. It's
I got you.
really our problem.
I think a big thing was one. I don't think the defensive line gets anything done. The defensive line sucks. Both everything. A lot of stuff on this team is really bad. So I think that consistently running backs are really able to kind of get through that. Initial guys. Our linebackers are kind of where this defense lies. And Gallagher and Xander Mueller, both leading tacklers in the Big Ten.
I saw that.
Big reason for that is, because, they're running the ball all the time and the defense is always on the field. That's a major reason for that. But they are also big tacklers. And I think that's probably why you're getting those 5-6 yard runs a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because they're getting through the defensive line and then the linebackers are making a play, but not really early enough to limit the run stop. Against Minnesota in the second half, that's when you really started to see the defense learn how to stop the run. I think Minnesota, you said like 150 in the first half, 90, something like that in the second half. However, about half of those 90 came on one big running play on like a 4th and 1 that they broke off.
I saw that. Yeah.
That's something where we thought the game would be over after that. And then they ended up coming back and then made tons of stops throughout the fourth quarter. I think Minnesota only had like 1 or 2 first downs the entire time. So the defense was finally able to, even getting some negative yards plays or really limiting the run to only 2 or 3 yards per play. I think that was a big thing where Bryce Gallagher was very good, jumping some plays. There was one play like 3rd and 2 late in the game. He completely jumped up and tackled for a loss. That's the one play that stands out to me. So I think consistency is another issue with the way that the defense works in stopping the run. But yeah, Penn State might run for 400 yards and I wouldn't exactly be surprised.
I mean, personally, we would like that. We've been kind of waiting for it, but I'm trying to think of anything else I had here. Went over Ben Bryant. That was the big thing to me because I watched the Rutgers game and I actually did not know that like he transferred in from Cincinnati. I'm like, wow, Northwestern, like that's a big get. And then I saw they struggled in that game, but now I think kind of like I talked about with Aller getting used to these receivers on our team. It kind of looks like Bryant did the same thing in that game. Like you said, the big breakout for a couple of those guys at the receiver position in the second half. So that was the big thing I wanted to look forward to. And I think that's going to be probably my favorite matchup for this game is the Penn State secondary going up against those guys. Cause I honestly think it'll probably be their best test so far this year. I don't think West Virginia is a run-first team. Delaware, I can't count what they do as anything of substance. Illinois, I think, wanted to throw the ball, and Altmaier completed more to Penn State than he did at Illinois. And then Iowa, their wide receivers have 14 catches on the season, so I can't say anything about that. So I do think that for us, this will be the first good challenge from a solid receiving course. That's the big thing I am looking forward to.
Do we want to make some score predictions here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first if you guys want me to, but I'm on the kinder side, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But I do give Northwestern a lot of credit for what they did at the end of that game last week. That did impress me, but I think Penn State might start a little slow. Like I mentioned, the vast difference in the atmosphere. James Franklin said today they didn't put music on at practice because they wanted to simulate Saturday. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, that was interesting that he said that.
We're
Not
all
wrong.
we're all on our student section like executive board, and
Ooh.
we got a big crowd
Mhm.
at the start of the Minnesota game, at least. However, Ashley and I went to get content for like our social media pages, trying to like play where they would make a lot of noise. It was the worst 15 minutes of sitting in the student section I've ever seen, because there was just nobody making any noise, and everyone had left by the middle of the second quarter. So yeah, I don't blame James Franklin for that.
There was more noise at the fourth quarter when there were only 40 people there than everyone was there at the first quarter, or in my opinion.
I got you. The line, I think, was 27. I think that's not a bad number, honestly, in my opinion. I was in like the 41 to 14 range when we did our predictions. So I'm gonna stick with that. I think that's a solid number.
Yeah, I can start. I think the question is not whether or not we lose to Penn State, it's how much are we gonna get absolutely smacked by Penn State. Yeah, I'm going 45-3.
Wow.
I think I don't know what happens of the third and fourth quarter of our last game. I hope it happens again, crossing my fingers. I just don't have faith that it will against a team that's ranked so highly. So I'm gonna go 45-3.
I'm gonna be a little bit nicer. I think actually Northwestern gets the ball first. They scored a touchdown on their opening drive. It's like an Ohio State from like last year moment. Northwestern's leading like 7-0 early first quarter, and then kind of the wheels kind of fall off from there. I think Jack Lausch actually scores the rushing touchdown. It's from the 7-yard line, scores a rushing touchdown. And then Penn State, scores 21-28 to end the first half. I think Northwestern will get another touchdown in the second half, maybe a Bryant to Henning bomb or something, make it 3 straight weeks. With the pair linking up, but I think that at the end of the game, it'll be 42-14 Penn State.
Look, the odds are stacked against Northwestern.
Oh, are we taking Northwestern?
Listen, Manny Diaz lost to FIU. That is all I am saying.
That did happen.
I cried after Manny Diaz lost to FIU. And for that reason, I will never trust Manny Diaz again. Northwestern held Penn State to 17 points in a hurricane last year. Well, now it's going to be a nice, like, 70-degree day.
Saw that.
11 a.m. I think Penn State doesn't wake up on time. Penn State 17, Northwestern 21. Northwestern wins. We're rushing the field for a second straight weekend.
Let's go. That'll be fun, actually.
I like that.
I don't really think that, but I'm going to say that because
Go for it.
I'm going to hope for it.